Hello and welcome to another edition of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm joined by my co-host and brother Shane Burnham, and we have our first ever guest on the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. Yeah, that's right. Adam Eaton from Sons of UCF is joining us today. Adam, welcome to the show.
Well, I did not know it was the first. That's quite a heavy burden to carry, but glad to be with you. Congrats on this show. I've been watching along, both of you guys, and love what you're doing. So I can't wait to talk a little UCF Knights football.
Yeah, breaking the seal with Adam. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you getting on here.
Yeah, man, and especially on short notice and with everything that's going on with camp just starting. But if you're new to the show, obviously Shane and I are Tallahassee based. We both have a relationship with Florida State, and a history with Florida State, but we kind of want to be a more comprehensive college football show. And so what we thought we would do is kind of take a spin around the state of Florida to start with and talk about some of the college football teams in the state of Florida. We hit a little bit on USF last week, and I have, Adam, I don't know if you know this, I spent 7 years on staff at USF, including the beatdown in Raymond James Stadium when you guys had the running back Kevin Smith and I think the receiver that was so great.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Audio just cut out for some reason, Pat. Sorry about that.
So when Shane went to UCF and I was out of football, it killed me to have to go to Orlando. But I will say this. The 3 years I spent around first of all, it's a beautiful campus. We would only ride in. We played y'all at UCF one time in the bounce house right after it hadn't been open very long. It was a great game. I don't know if you remember it, but it was back and forth. Levitt was still the head coach. I think O'Leary was the head coach for UCF at the time, and it was a 4-quarter game, and we barely got out of there with a win. That stadium was crazy. But anyway, so I have a better appreciation for UCF than I used to. When I was at USF, they were the bitter enemy, and the war on I-4, and Jim wanted that game to be every year. They finally got it, and then of course I can't remember what happened, and Jim all of a sudden wanted to play Miami. But anyway, listen, thanks for joining us. But Shane, go ahead. You coached at UCF for 3 years. You know Adam. I'm kind of going to let you guys lead the way, and I'm kind of going to follow.
No, I thought it'd be good, Adam, to get you on here just because of your familiarity with the program, and whether it was back with George or Scott, part one, Josh. I know you've been around the program for a long time and had a lot of knowledge about what's going on. I was really interested. We followed Scott there with our staff, so we were able to come in, and there was still a lot of George's recruits on that roster because George had only been gone for 3 seasons. Of course, Scott had filled that roster out. And I thought when we walked into our time at UCF, heading into the 2018 season, coming off the 12-0, 13-0 year, just had a really stacked roster, whether it was quarterback, receiver, tailback. Defensively, we thought we had enough pieces to go play. Curious, been 5 years since I left. Where is it now coming off the Big 12 and recruiting to that league the last 2 years? I'm assuming you've seen a jump, but what is Scott walking into just talent-wise? Roster, I don't know much about it. Curious where he's at.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Like a lot of people want to talk about 2024 UCF, which was obviously a disappointing 4-8 campaign. And guys, in 2025 college football, you can reset faster. 69 new players on this roster for Scott Frost. So even looking at last year's roster with Gus Malzahn doesn't tell you a lot because a lot of those guys are gone. And so Frost had to go heavy in the portal to find players and kind of build out a staff on the fly, build out players and a roster on the fly. So 69 new players feature on this team. And to be candid, Shane, I don't know that we know what we have. Like, I think there's some pockets where you look at this team and you say, okay, I see some depth, I see some strength, I see some names I know, but a lot of the names are unknown, they're unproven. And it's interesting, and I'm curious, both of you being around football and spend a lot of time there. Frost took a really interesting philosophy with his roster. So with all due respect to Gus, I don't know who's right and wrong in these situations, but the Gus regime in the transfer portal and in the recruiting game, they were big on stars. If you had 3 and 4 stars, 5 stars next to your name, they were in on you. If you were coming from Georgia, you were coming from Alabama, you were coming from Auburn, they were in on you. And that's kind of where Gus and that staff kind of put their targets. And here we are in the Big 12, and obviously it hasn't made a ton of success. If you look at what Frost brought in, he has not brought in a ton of these 4 or 5-star transfers. He's not going for the kids from bigger schools. He's really kind of playing into that chip on the shoulder, smaller school mentality, bring kids in who are hungry, who want a chance to play, want a chance to prove themselves, and bring those guys in on the roster. He's not going after, the kids coming from Georgia, Alabama. He's coming after a certain kind of kid. We were at Big 12 Media Day, and both him and athletic director Terry Mahajer told me that they interviewed kids more than kids interviewed them, that they knew the profile of what they wanted, and they were looking for that right kid. Now, what else are they going to say? Of course, right? Interesting that they took a complete 180 from what Gus Malzahn did. They're not going after the names, the stars. They're going after what they're calling as more fit and people who want to be a part of this team. I have no idea if that's going to work, and that's a really big gamble if you're Scott Frost. It could work, famously, right? Or it could be a complete disaster. I don't think we know yet just because there's so much newness on this roster.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Shane.
Well, I don't know the Nebraska makeup, what happened. A lot of close losses out there, certainly. Don't know the quarterback and who was pulling the trigger for Scott. But it does seem, when I was there, whether it was George or Scott's takes, we had undersized guys at quarterback, we had undersized guys at running back, receiver, Pat Jasinski, Joey Connors. There were some, the twins, right? A lot of guys would steer clear of the twins because of the amputation of the arm. So,
Yep.
But great football players, I agree. And we had a ton of those guys that were just ball players. Pat, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, you mentioned bringing in the players, not so much worried about stars. Did, one of the things that Florida State has done in the portal changed from when they first got it. They went away from bringing kids in that had potential in the portal and went after guys that had production in their previous school, regardless of what level they were playing at. Have you had a chance to study the UCF roster? You mentioned it's not full of a lot of names. Probably the biggest name I see looking at their transfer list is Sincere Edwards, the edge from Pitt. Of course, I know you got Nigel Kelly, but I think he's been there I think this will be his second year.
Yep.
You got him through the portal from Miami, but most of the rest of the guys, to be honest with you, I recognize a few of the names from my days covering recruiting, but are most of them guys that had production where they were before?
Yeah, we brought in the kid. I'll give you the stats real quick. 939 yards receiving last year and 11 touchdowns, right? Those are pretty good stats, right?
Yeah.
He compiled those for something called Limestone University, which is no longer a school. I think they actually literally just closed like a couple weeks ago. So
right.
Yeah, to your point, Pat, there's production on this roster, but it's just not at the P4 level. In some cases, not even at the FBS level. And I think that's the challenge is, these kids can play. I don't think he wouldn't got a bunch of stiffs off the street. He's got kids who can play, who've got talent, but never at this level. And I think that's the big gamble to Shane's point you're taking here is this could work out great. Like these could be kids who have been dying for an opportunity, didn't get it for whatever reason. Now the kid I'm referring to, his name is DJ Black. He was committed to South Carolina for a while, left South Carolina, went to Limestone, now back at UCF. So you see the pedigrees are there, but he definitely didn't go after the kids from the bigger schools. But yeah, they're stats to be had, Pat. It's just how do you translate that to a P4 level? How do you translate that to playing against Baylor and Texas Tech versus whoever the heck Limestone plays against, which I don't even know. I think that's the part we don't know about just yet.
I assumed, right, Pat, that there would be a line of scrimmage adjustment for all, whether it was BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, when these teams made the jump to the Big 12. And I think by and large, you saw that. So, and again, Adam, it's a new team, but without watching UCF play the last couple of years with Gus as they made that transition, I'm assuming a lot that the line of scrimmage, and maybe you'll tell me quarterback play, or I know they had a running back that could run, so I know offensive line, they ran the ball well, but was it the defensive line where they fell short, or was there an Achilles heel to those teams that they just couldn't catch up in terms of talent going into the Big 12, or was it something different the last couple of years as they transitioned?
Yeah, Coach, it was depth. It was absolutely depth across both lines. I mean, it's not uncommon. If you go back to some of the game logs from UCF in 2023, 24 in the Big 12, I mean, they'd be in games in the third quarter. I'll never forget, it was 2023. We played West Virginia at home, and it's close game. I would say it's like 31-27, something like that. West Virginia's winning, and they just started leaning on that line, and all of a sudden, a 5-yard run, 4-yard run, 6-yard run, 5-yard run. And all of a sudden, what happens? They break a 30-yarder, right? Next possession down, 5-yard run, 4-yard run, 3-yard run. And they just leaned on that D line for UCF, and they couldn't do anything about it. The offensive line just moved them wherever they wanted to. That was really the Achilles heel for UCF. It was their rushing defense the last two seasons. I mean, they just got gashed. I mean, in 2023, I think they were giving up the most yards per game on the ground of anybody in the P4 level. So it's certainly been depth. And you guys both know this. I tell people about UCF when you talk about this, like we're in the middle of Central Florida, right? Spoiler alert, athletes everywhere, right? You can just go to the grocery store and bump into an athlete like in the produce aisle, right? right? So I think UCF always felt good from an athletic and a talent standpoint, right? You take our best 11 against your best 11, athlete versus athlete. I think most schools in Florida feel pretty good about it. But it's when you get to depth and line play, I think that's where UCF always had an Achilles heel. So, yeah, you could find an RJ Harvey, which is the running back you're referring to, and great athlete, going to put over 2,000 yards on the ground. But the challenge is when you have to get skill position players, particularly big, large humans up front, that's where UCF's always struggled a little bit. Even when you were there, Shane, you guys
no doubt
struggled to find some of those, and you had the Wyatt Millers and some of those guys and the Matt Lees who were athletic and could move a little bit, which fit your systems. But in the Big 12, those guys are just getting pushed over, and I think that's been the challenge. Is not so much talent, it's depth. They just can't stay a 4-quarter game and sustain either blocking the opponents or more so on defense, stop on the run or getting to the quarterback in any way, shape, or form.
And there's a lot of things that go into that. The recruiting and the portal now can either destroy depth or add depth. Do you think it's been either a lack of portal funds? Because obviously when you recruit the line of scrimmage, you're in some fights when it comes to that. Has that been the hamstring? Has it just been, like you said, the new making the transition, going from group of 5 to power 5 and still playing catch up with facilities? What do you think led to that, or how can they get their way out of it going forward?
Yeah, I think NIL, UCF's never going to be the top spender at NIL, right? But I do think they spent more than they planned on spending. I think Gus was able to galvanize the fan base and get some more donations in there and get some things moving. They had an NIL collective at the time. So I do think they were able to spend more than they probably wanted to, and obviously more than they ever had. Small sample size, but more than they ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But they're never going to be you're not competing with BYU. Right, you're not competing with Texas Tech and oil money. Like, you're just not going to be in that top 4 or 5 in the Big 12. But I think they felt good about where they were. I heard the Florida State episode you did recently. Herb Hand was UCF's offensive line coach. I mean, he did a nice job coaching those guys up, and he turned a couple of them into draft picks, guys who are playing at the next level right now. So I think they had coaching. I think they had some development, but the challenge was they only had 5 guys. And as soon as somebody tweaked an ankle, as soon as somebody got a targeting penalty, as soon as somebody did something, I mean, UCF could never really recover from that. And I think that's always been the Achilles heel. Yeah, to your point, if they were in a battle for a Texas Tech over a left tackle, we're not winning that. And I think
nobody is these days.
That's a good point. I think that was part of the challenge that they faced. But I think they had money. I saw, Shane, you sent over some questions kind of in advance. And the one question that you're kind of asking here as well is, why did it not work, right? Why did this not work the last couple of years? The easy answer is quarterback. I mean, candidly, UCF just missed on quarterback. KJ Jefferson was not the player that everyone thought he was going to be. He came into camp and the whisper started about him being out of shape and him not really, kind of diving into the playbook and maybe his level of commitment. The years before that, John Rice Plumlee, fantastic athlete. By the way, he plays receiver in the NFL now, not quarterback. So
that's right.
Tells you a little bit about where he was at. So the simple answer in that sense, Shane, is quarterback. Gus never got quarterback right in his time at UCF. Dylan Gabriel lasted all of 3 games in a UCF uniform, and after that he was gone.
Right.
And then it's been Mikey Keene, it's been John Rice Plumlee, it's been KJ Jefferson. And with all due respect to those 3 players, I don't think any of them are getting it to the level you want from a quarterback standpoint.
Well, that brings it full circle. Now, Tommy here with Gus at Florida State.
That's shocking.
Reconnect. How do you make sense of that, please?
Shocking. I'm really honestly, and look, behind the scenes, you hear things. I never know what's true or not, but obviously, coming into that 23 season, Mikey Keene had left, and that was kind of John Rice Plumlee's main competition, and it was Thomas Castellanos and it was John Rice Plumlee. Those were the 2 kind of up for the job, and a lot of whispers in that spring camp where that Tommy had closed some ground, had done some really good things. UCF fans will always give Tommy a little bit of crap because right after the spring game, he got to the podium and he said, "I'm the future of UCF football." 7 days later, he was in the portal. So that future didn't last all that long. So somehow, some way,
it meant the immediate future. The immediate future.
He didn't gel with that staff. He didn't like what he was hearing from a feedback standpoint. Maybe didn't like hearing that he wasn't going to be the starter. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but there were talks that he was going to have that role, and he didn't. So when he went back to Gus and Gus's system, it was interesting, right? It was interesting to see that because he could have stayed in that system. That year, I mean, you can't predict these things, as you guys both know. That year, Plumlee got hurt in game 2. So
right.
would have been the quarterback for probably the bulk of that middle of that season. And if he was good, he'd probably still be the quarterback at UCF unless someone like Texas Tech came to pay him a lot of money. But he bolted forward. Now he's back to Gus. I find that whole thing fascinating. I hope it works for him. Seems like a nice kid.
It makes me laugh when you bring that quote up about the future. It reminds me of Fletch when he's talking to the doctor and he says, "It was so sudden." He's like, "What do you mean?" He was sick for a month. He's like, "Well, at the very end, he was on his deathbed for a week." Well, at the very, very end. No doubt. Love Fletch. Again, I'll stay on that while we're talking about the quarterback. Who is going to be the quarterback at UCF? Who is competing for it this year? And who are the guys that are up for the job? KZ's back, obviously. Favorite son. Love to see KZ. That offense is, I know Scott and KZ will do a great job. But who will be the guy they're coaching? Do you know?
I was hoping you two knew because I sure don't know. And
I'm going Tavon Jackson.
That seems to be the leader in the clubhouse, Pat. A lot of people think Tavon Jackson, Tennessee, then Indiana transferred to UCF, has had a little bit of playing time. Here's what I would tell you. You mentioned transfers earlier, Pat. Last year, UCF brought in Ja'Curry Brown from Miami.
Yep.
He was essentially the backup to KJ, although we played like 7 quarterbacks last year. So who knows who was what at the end of the day. But he got a couple of run games in there for UCF. Played decent against Iowa State on the road. And the knock on him was ball placement, accuracy, and decision making, right? That he just wasn't up to speed in those areas. You bring in Tavon Jackson, you think you have some of that pedigree, right? He's been a P4 recruited quarterback. But I think, guys, I would tell you right now, I think there's something intriguing that this staff likes about Ja'Curry Brown. He's a plus athlete. I think we all know that if you watch him play. He's a superior athlete on the field. He can bring a wrinkle to the Frost game. You guys both know Frost likes to run a little bit with his quarterback, right? So Ja'Curry's legs will certainly be of use there. If he can bring down the accuracy issues, we talked to McKenzie a week ago, Shane, and he told us that he saw a ton of improvement from when they started spring to when they ended spring, and what he's seen on tape. Again, they can't coach the guys right now, but what he's seen on tape from spring to now, he thinks Ja'Curry's improved even more in the passing game. So I think there's something about Ja'Curry they really, really like. I think the smart money is on Tavon, just on pedigree. But I think if they can figure out a way to make Ja'Curry work, I think they'll do that. But I was actually curious. I hate to ask a question of the host on a podcast, but I'd like both.
It's a conversation.
I'm also curious, like the line is going to be remade. Paul Rubelt, the only holdover that's left. 4 new pieces of the offensive line, right? I know Rubelt still hanging out there, Shane.
That's right.
9th year senior at this point, but I'm curious how much the line and the weapons are going to dictate who the quarterback is. Because if you can't block up front, does that change who you want as quarterback, right? And that's where I think Ja'Curry's ability to maybe make something out of nothing, to use his legs to get plus yards when it's not there. If you're not putting your line, you having somebody who can bail you out and grab 3 yards instead of -7 feels like a win for a coaching staff.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I think if be creative, move the pocket, right? Guys that can. I think certainly you talked about the quarterback run game, but surely if you can take a broken down play, and make something out of nothing, or at least move the pocket for them, half rolls, dashes, sprint. Those type of things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons Florida State brought in Castellanos, because they have no idea when they brought him in what this offensive line was going to look like going into this season. Now they brought 4 transfers in that have started experience, but listen, Florida State went through 3 quarterbacks last year that couldn't get a damn thing done because it was the most pathetic offensive line in America. And even Brock Glenn and Luke Cromenhawk both could run, but they couldn't run from that. I mean, they just couldn't get it done. So yeah, I think that if your deficit is your offensive line, certainly a dual threat quarterback gives you more of a chance than a guy who's just straight drop back. I mean, Florida State didn't have any success last year, no matter who was in the quarterback, because the offensive line was so bad. So you can only overcome so much. But yeah, I agree with you. If your offensive line is your weak link on your offense, dual threat quarterback, and probably do some things like we've seen, spread them out, right? Spread them out all over the field, use some tempo to, gas them, not allow them, but that's some things you sometimes don't typically do. But yeah, I think that I forgot how it's been a long time since I saw Ja'Curry play. So, but I do remember being a long athlete.
Yeah. So I think smart money is on Tavon now. I think the wild card intriguing option is Ja'Curry Brown. And then in case of emergency break glass option is Cam Fancher, who transferred in from Florida State. I think he was at FAU. He was at Marshall before that. Hasn't had a ton of success, but he's also played behind some dreadful lines. But he's your fifth-year kind of senior veteran guy, left-handed thrower, so a little bit different than the other two quarterbacks. So I think if you want to go ultra-conservative, you roll out Cam Fancher, don't turn the ball over, move the ball down the field, and hope our defense can win in some games. If you want a little bit of excitement, I think you go with Ja'Cory Brown. And I think there's something there, Shane, that I think Frost likes a little bit of what he's seen there. And you could just tell the way Mackenzie was talking about the improvement he saw. And you guys know coach speak better than I do. Here's the coach speak we're hearing from Coach Frost. And you guys maybe translate this for me. He's saying, someone has to come take the job. No one's taken the job yet. That means, to me, that means he's looking for something and is waiting for someone to go do that thing. And I don't know what that thing is, but he keeps saying someone has to come take the job. No one's taken the job yet. That's the speech you get around Frost and Mackenzie right now in the quarterback role.
Yeah, he's probably looking for somebody to take over the huddle. I think that would be one thing. You know, who do the other 10 guys want to play for, right? I think that's a big part of being a quarterback. You know, there's a difference, and when one guy's in the huddle than the other. So I think there's probably some of that there, and probably, you know, the other part is probably just more black and white. And somebody's got to set themselves apart in practice, and nobody's done that yet.
Yeah, to me, when I hear that, I feel like the second thing you just said there, Pat and Adam, the consistency. Someone, you know, you see flashes here. Hey, you had a good day today. Adam, you were good yesterday. Pat, you were good the day before. And, you know, just someone to come take it, be to consistently do the job. I got this thing over my shoulder somewhere, consistency, you know, by George Allen. But, you know, that the ability to repeat the performance, that's what you want. So I'm assuming that's what it would be. But that's a bad feeling. I remember somebody asked me about Dylan Gabriel. They said, you know, Mackenzie gets hurt, and you had it might have been you on our podcast conversation. When did you realize that Wimbush and DG, and it was pretty quick, right? You could just see the difference. He took command of 7-on-7. It didn't take long. So maybe they're starting to see that, like you said, from KZ, the way he's talking.
Also, you guys both know they're also not going to tell us either, right? I don't think Scott's going to call me up personally and be like, hey, Adam, just let you know, here's something like. So sure. I don't know how long they'll run the game for where they don't know who the quarterback is. They might know internally, right, or have their lean at this point. But in terms of what they're saying to the media, what they're saying to everybody right now, it's just been Scott says, I have 3 guys I think I can win with.
That's good. That's hard. Not many people do.
I got a question for you on the Scott Frost deal. You know, they say you can't go home again, and it certainly was the case of him going back to Nebraska. But, you know, they brought him back to UCF, where he had the most success he's ever had as a coach, and the most success UCF has ever had outside of, I think they had one great season under O'Leary where I think they went to the Fiesta.
Well, your brother here had a good year in 2018.
That's right. How surprised were you that it was Frost? How do you think that all played out? And do you think that he can because in my opinion, of course, I consider myself a Florida kid. It's where I finished growing up. It's where I played high school ball. I've spent time at USF on staff, and I always thought that, you know, if we ever got into a major conference, boy, Katie barred the door. And we were in the Big East, but we never finished the deal in the Big East. I think UCF's a really good job. And I know they only get the half share for the first 2 years in the Big 12, and Gus has used that as one of the reasons that he decided to leave, which kind of a loser's limp type of thing. Hey, I just want to
going into it. I don't know. No one told him he didn't get it. I don't know.
Yeah. So how did this happen from what you know, and how do you think this plays out in part 2? And by the way, it's a Big 12 thing. Rich Rod's back at West Virginia.
The whole band's back together. So something we had known behind the scenes, and I saw recently Andrea Adelson reported it, so I feel comfortable sharing more about it. In 2023, Tim Harris Jr. left UCF to go to Miami. That opened up an offensive coordinator spot for UCF. Scott Frost interviewed for that job. He spent time with Terry Mohajir. Apparently, Gus was in favor of this. Now, again, this is what we're told. This is what Andrea Adelson reported as well. Gus was in favor of Scott coming back to UCF as the offensive coordinator. Shane's look is fantastic right now because I can tell you thinking there's no shot. Not would have worked. But allegedly, that was the conversation. But that didn't work out. But in the course of that conversation, Terry Mohajir, the athletic director, spent some time with Scott, got to know Scott, got to kind of learn a little bit about him. And so when Gus decides that he's stepping away to go to Florida State, Scott's on the short list. And And the way Malzahn framed it, and I actually do think this is probably accurate, although I'm sure there's agents and coach speaks involved, that he talked to 5 or 6 different guys and talked about the UCF job. And Scott was the one who wanted it the most. The other ones would have taken it, but Scott wanted it. And he said to him, that was a differentiator, that he looked across the table and he saw a guy in Scott Frost who said, that was the best I've ever had it. I would do anything to get back there. And Terry feels like that's going to be an intangible that he can use and leverage rather than hiring, Andy Kotelnicki from Penn State, right? Who would take the job, but maybe bounce someplace else. That this is where Scott wants to be. So that's kind of a little bit of the backstory about how Scott's name kind of got to come about. Now, Scott would tell you he had to be talked into it. Terry will tell you that Scott wanted the job. So I'll let those two arm wrestle one day and figure that piece out. In terms of how it's going over, guys, this to me is your ultimate head and heart argument. The heart of the UCF fan is like, oh, he's back. He's finally back. The guy who brought us the most success. Oh, and he brought KZ with him. And, oh, Sean Beckton's with him too. And, oh, he brought out, like, they're back. They're going to do everything great. UCF Fast is back. Everyone's happy because it's nostalgia, right? The heart is full and happy if you're a UCF fan. Then the head kicks in. You go, wait a minute. It's been 16-31 at Nebraska. He's 5-22 in one-score games. He got fired mid-season. There's some stuff off the field. He was out of the game for 2.5 years. He hates NIL. So it's an ultimate head and heart argument, guys, because the heart of the UCF fan, how could you not love him coming back? This is the redemption story. Everyone loves a redemption story. But your head goes, is this really going to work out? For all the reasons you said, Pat, this is not the American Conference anymore. This is the Big 12. He's been out of it for a long time. There are a bunch of other players on other teams that are obviously perhaps bigger and stronger than UCF. So it's ultimate head-heart argument. In terms of Terry Malzahn, short of hiring Nick Saban, I don't think he could have nailed this hire any better because everybody universally likes the energy and likes what Scott brings. But everyone loves their coach when you're 0-0. So let's see how it happens once they strap up. But I think it's head and heart right now. The heart of UCF fans it's full of all this nostalgia. But as soon as we get on the field and realize, oh, can this guy really coach? You guys talked about his track record, 7 years, 1 winning season. That 1 winning season was that 13-0 year UCF. Other than that, he has not had a winning season as a head coach. If you said, I always say this to the audience, Shane, not to cut you off. If I just deleted Scott Frost's name from his resume and wrote Shane Burnham on the top, would fans be as excited? And I think that's a head-heart argument, right? You look at the name and you go, oh my God, Scott Frost back. Then you look at the resume and you go, oh, Scott Frost back. So we'll see how it plays out.
It's funny you mentioned that. So I got thoughts on why Scott had success, and there are a lot of reasons Scott had success at UCF, and I don't know all the things at Nebraska, but I feel like I do know UCF quite a bit from being there. We talk about it with Mike. Mike's had a couple tough years. Which year is the outlier? Is it the 13-0 season or 12-1 season? Was it the 2-10? What's harder to do at Florida State? It's there's been a lot more double-digit win seasons than there have been 2 or 3 win seasons, right? So you'd say by comparison, it's harder to win 2 or 3 games at Florida State than it is to win 10. I mean, that's just sounds weird to say that. The same thing with Scott. When you say that, it blows my mind. And then you go back to the one score games. Okay. That's marked, disparity in those 1 score games. So then you think what's missing from the program that allows that to repeat itself, 5-22 or whatever that number was. So, and then I'll say to finish that point at UCF, when you fall into a quarterback, and I say they recruited KZ. I don't mean to fall into a quarterback. When you hit at quarterback, and KZ was a hit. Now, let me tell you in every way, that's a game changer. And then George O'Leary, people, if you know George now, people in football, that dude was a coaching son of a gun, hard nosed. And you talk about roster of chip on your shoulder, PhD, he found a roster full like we talked about. So I think Scott benefited from that. And did a great job too. Don't get me wrong.
I don't realize, Shane, how much talent O'Leary left him in 2015. Yeah, they were winless in 2015, and so it's easy to say, "Oh, that team was garbage." But he left him some talent. And to your point, Scott brought in pieces, right? You bring in Mackenzie Milton, you bring in Adrian Killens, right?
Yes.
Otis Anderson, right? You bring in Gabe Davis. You hit on some of these guys, and all of a sudden,
no doubt,
things are looking better, right? So I think it'll be ultimate head-heart argument. I think, if you're a UCF fan, your hope is he's back in Florida. His system fits Florida better. Obviously, it's more of a speed system that he wants to run. He can probably do that better in Florida than Nebraska. He's talked about, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, and you all can kind of go and read his quotes. I think the Nebraska job kind of ate him alive a little bit, right? I think the lights are really, really bright when you're the main star in that state. And I don't think he was ready for that. And I'm curious also your thoughts on this as well, fellas, is for people remember, and Shane, you know this better than anybody, he took his entire staff with him to Nebraska, right? That's
the whole building.
Staff literally packed up and went. And I think there's some people who are like, hey, was that the right staff? Did he surround himself with just yes men? Not a lot of those guys are back this time around. Becton's back, and KZ was a player's back. Outside of that, right. I think Travis Fisher's back in an analyst role. Zach Duvall's back in the strength room. But outside of that, this is a new staff. Mike Dawson's back, but this is a new staff. So he didn't bring back the entire band like he did the first time. So maybe he's learned something. Maybe that's a change. I don't know.
Yeah, because he took his whole staff with him from UCF to Nebraska. Every single person. Everybody
went with him. The guy who runs the lines at the practices, the chain gang, they all went with him.
We came in. I flew in
in a sticky. I've got a sticky notes in there.
We got a couple more questions for you before we move forward. I want to thank our sponsors before we get going because we know you're on a short time frame, but we do want to thank Ascension Sports. Ascension Sports, where athletes rise above the noise, whether you're navigating NIL deals, building your personal brand, or preparing for the next level. Ascension Sports provides tailored consulting to help maximize every opportunity on and off the field, from recruiting insight to pre-draft prep and everything in between. Learn more at ascensionsportsconsulting.com. Again, ascensionsportsconsulting.com. And Shane, where can you be reached?
At Shane Burnham 52 on the X and IG machine.
All right. We also want to thank Todd and Scott Harrell from Home Instead of Tallahassee. At Home Instead, their adaptable care plans give you the confidence of personalized help that's with you throughout your day, even though we know there are plenty of things you still want to fly solo on, like finishing your Sudoku or trying Aqua Zumba or watching baseball, or also hogging the remote. We'll provide companionship when you need it and space when you don't, all with a smile from qualified, compassionate caregivers matched to you. Visit Home Instead online for a better what's next at homeinsteadtally.com. homeinsteadtally.com. And we also want to thank our good friend Dan Mowry and the Mowry Law Firm over in St. Pete. The Mowry Law Firm, headed by former Florida State kicker Dan Mowry, specializes in car and truck accidents, premise liability, and wrongful death cases. Dan's team of lawyers brings over 50 years of experience with them. You can reach them at 904-824-7799 or at MowryLaw.com. Okay, if you're just joining us, we are about to wrap up with Adam Eaton from Sons of UCF, talking a little UCF night football. One of my questions to you, is the schedule. How do you think this schedule marries up with what Central Florida has on its roster? Obviously, opening up with the ever dangerous Jacksonville State Gamecocks. If you're a Florida State fan, don't take the Gamecocks lightly. They'll bite you when you're not expecting it. Then you get North Carolina A&T, Adam. Then a couple of really interesting games. You get to welcome Uncle Bill from Chapel Hill to the bounce house in North Carolina, which will be probably one of the most watched games of that particular weekend. Then you hit the road to Kansas State, Kansas, then at Cincinnati, West Virginia, at Baylor, Houston, at Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, at BYU, and then at BYU to end the season. How does this season line up for UCF and what they have coming back, or with 69 new faces? How does this schedule match up for them?
Yeah, we've been thinking about what do you, and I'm curious both of you from your perspectives, what do you consider success for a Scott Frost year one team, right? 69 new faces, an entire new, basically a hard reset. Now you can do it faster in 2025 with the portal, but this is a hard reset. Let's not make mistakes about it. I think we typically fall in that 4 to 6 win range. I think is where people would say, hey, if you're flirting with bowl eligibility in year one, you're probably at least on the right track, right? So you look at the record, Pat, and you say, where do you find 6 wins? You got to hope you find the first 2 wins in Jackson State and North Carolina A&T, right? Nothing's given in life, and we know that you can get snuck up on anybody, but you got to think you got to win both of those 2 games, right? That makes that North Carolina game really interesting because who knows what North Carolina is going to be? They get tested in week 1, and when they go play, TCU comes to them, right? So they'll get tested really early, so that you'll see if they're a good team or not. I think if you can win that North Carolina game at home, UCF typically a better home team than road team, as most teams are. Then you're sitting 3-0. Then you got to find 3 wins in the rest of that Big 12 schedule. And I think that's where you look at, you got to circle the home games, right?
Yep.
Oklahoma State, Houston in the space rivalry game, as we'll call it. They have West Virginia at home with Rich Rod. Again, kind of a battle of the unknowns on both rosters. So that's kind of how you maybe get to 6 and circle 6. And then if you can go steal one on the road, right? They have a really tough road schedule. They go at Kansas State, who I think is one of the better teams in the Big 12. They go at Baylor, again, one of the better teams, at Texas Tech, one of the better teams, at BYU, although the quarterback situation is kind of in flux there. Still a better team. No one wants to play in Provo at night after Thanksgiving, so that's a tough one. So can you steal one of those? They also have at Cincinnati, who probably pretends to be at the bottom half of the Big 12. So can you steal a road game? If this UCF team can steal a road game, I think that's where you feel better about getting to that 6-win mark. UCF's 2-7 in road games in the Big 12 so far. Now, the good news is none of these guys have any care about that. They weren't here for that, but they're still 2-7 in road games in the Big 12 in their 2 years so far. You got to find a way to scratch a road win out. You got to win the games you have to win, and hope you get some dumb football luck somewhere along the way to get to 6 wins and start flirting with bowl eligibility.
That's something people don't talk about is road environment, right? There's real road environments that's different than what we were doing at times in the American. Cincinnati had a good environment, but you're right. At Kansas State,
ECU not on the schedule.
That's right. So tough road environments, long trips. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that. But there are some toss-up games.
You mentioned Cincinnati. Nippert Stadium is such a weird place to play. I don't know if y'all have ever played there. We played there multiple times when I was at USF. It's Gothic looking.
Yes.
It's hard to explain. There is no stadium. It's not, and now it's much bigger now than it was when I was at USF. They've done major expansion to the place, but it's really a weird place to play. We never played well there at all at USF. It was just It's weird. I mean, I can't explain Cincinnati Stadium to anybody.
Shane's played there once in a game I think we'd both like to forget in 2019, I guess it was Dylan's first year. It's interesting. UCF and Cincy have a bit of a rivalry, kind of going back to the Frost years, right? I mean, That's when Fickle just got there, and UCF was hammering Cincinnati, and all of a sudden Fickle got that thing turned around in the Heupel years, and those are some really, really tough battles. 19 and 20, Shane.
19 and 20. Yeah.
They were tough neck and neck battles. I think 36-33 we lose in 2020. We lose in a tough one in 2019. So that's been some tough battles. That's the closest a rival we have right now, Pat, not having the Cows in the conference anymore. I think it's UCF and Cincinnati are kind of those rivals there. So I think that'll be a rivalry game. And, at Nippert, throw out the records and see what happens.
Hey, do you brought up the I-4, the war on I-4? Do you think they ever get that thing reinstated? That's such a great game. I know it obviously with UCF being in the Big 12, it's not probably as advantageous because they're playing a much more difficult schedule week in and week out than USF is. But it's such a natural. I mean, the gate so big for that game, the intensity level between the fan bases, because there's so many UCF grads living in Tampa and vice versa, so many USF grads living in Orlando, such a short drive. I was shocked at the intensity level when I was at USF, particularly the first time we went over to the bounce house and played you guys, and then it was about sold out every time we played UCF at USF. Do you ever think they'll get back to that game?
I think Terry Mohajir said he wants to. I mean, here's the challenge, though, guys. Like, the schedule is built out for the next 6-7 years. So I don't know that either school has an opening. Now, these things get canceled all the time. So maybe a game down the road gets canceled out and schools have openings. But I think they're both scheduled up until, I think, 2032, if I heard that correctly. So it may be some time before they get back to it. I do think UCF wants that back. I mean, in other sports, basketball, baseball, softball, they still play USF. So I think they still want that rivalry. I think just the problem with football is, you guys know, they schedule that stuff so far in advance. I don't know if there's an opening or the window to get that game back on the schedule. If it is, it's going to have to come from somebody kind of buying somebody out there, or it's going to have to be in that late 2030, 2031, 32, 33 cycle, when the three of us are probably old gray men who have nothing to do with football anymore.
If I'm UCF,
I'm already old and turning gray, so that's already happened.
If I'm UCF, I don't play them. I treat them like Jim Leavitt. You know what? You guys are at the group of 5. We're up here at the P4. We have nothing to gain by playing this game other than maybe our fan base. But I'm, again, looking at it as a coach or administrator. Give me Bethune-Cookman. Give me we'll get their fan base in the stadium. I don't think I want to legitimize USF, and they should be a pretty dang good group of 5 on most years. because the kids they can recruit there. So
sleeping giant of college football. Hey, I know we got about to wrap it up, but there's a segment we have not done before, and it has a little bit of a Big 12 theme to it, and it's called What He Said, What We Heard. And I used to do this at the Osceola. We used to do it with What Coaches Say. That's just crazy. So I'm going to try to put this graphic up here. What he said, what we heard, and then I'm going to play this clip for you. And I want to get y'all's take on what had to be one of the strangest things I've ever heard a college football coach say.
There's a scene in The Wolf of Wall Street where they're talking about throwing midgets, and it's like, hey, this midget, can he, can he roll there? And he go, no, he doesn't roll. You throw him, you know what I mean? And they're made for throwing. And then after a while, they start talking, and they go, well, you know what? I think if you start talking, they may think they know we're making fun of them. The midgets may think that we're making fun of them. So then I'm gonna start, they may get mad at us. And then the guys go, well, what we need to do is make them think they're one of us. And they go, one of us, one of us. And I think that's the thing with coaching, call it recruiting, is it's that way. They talk about acquiring players, getting rid of players, just like that. And the whole thing underneath all that is they make them think they're one of us. You know what I mean? And it's like, but I don't know, do you have to do that to win? That sucks. Yeah.
Sean.
All right, so I've gone back and I've watched some Dave Aranda. That's the head coach at Baylor. What the hell was that?
First of all, what he said, we heard, brought to you by Miracle Ear. We need the proper sponsor for this section. Yeah. Dave's a great guy. Last time I saw Dave, we were at Walk-Ons in Baton Rouge having wings and drinking a cold pop. I'm not sure if he was, but great dude, highly intellectual, deep thinker, not your average football coach. I get it. Everybody says family, be part of our family. We'll take care of you. And the transactional nature is no. If in a lot of cases, we're going to buy you in today's NIL with a huge contract and entice you that way, and then we'll run you out the same way. We'll take your money, or I understand what he's saying. A lot of people hiding behind sayings and logos.
I have two things I love about that, Pat. One, the backdrop behind him said helping coaches help kids as he's giving that speech, which I thought was fantastic. Two, I bet he rehearsed that differently in his mind. There's a movie that this person says that I thought that going differently in my mind than it came out. And that's what sucks. I think Shane's right. The message, I think the intention of what he's trying to say is a good message, but I think you get the analogy in there. And here's the thing, Shane, you know Dave Aranda. I spoiler, I do not. But at Big 12 Media Day, you go around, talk to all the coaches. He's the most cerebral, but also the most low energy. I almost leave his press conference man, I'm kind of depressed. I don't feel good. I need to So smart guy. I think he saw that going differently in his mind. I just love that the backdrop is helping coaches help kids behind him as he's talking about tossing little people into other areas of God knows where.
It was interesting. And of course, now I went back and researched some of it. He is, as you guys said, really cerebral. He does look at things in a different lens than most people. He has made some other entertaining comments, curious comments, highly intellectual. I don't know if I'd call that one highly intellectual, but anyway, stuff that most college coaches don't say.
Here's the thing, Pat. If you would just read me that quote and said somebody in the Big 12 said that, I'd go, what did Mike Gundy do now? I would not expect that from Dave Aranda. I think that's the thing, is that sounds like if you put Mike Gundy on the screen, I think I buy that more than Dave Aranda.
I hope Gundy can figure out a way to last more past this year, because he is such a great quote machine and so interesting. I like him. I know.
Don't you enjoy that over the canned response we get from most coaches? I love Lane. Lane Kiffin's great because he'll say whatever's on. If you ask him, he's going to tell you the truth. I think that's cool about the Jason Eck guy out at, I think he's in Idaho now. Jason's pretty honest that way. I know you don't like Signetti, but I just love guys that are different. That don't feel like they have to say the cookie cutter, response. I don't know. I like it.
Well, Signetti's just arrogant and just brash. I mean, there's at least, at least when Spurrier his arrogance was built in with humor, right? I mean, I think that Cignetti takes himself way too seriously. I think he's a narcissist. I think he's probably a psychopath. And listen, a lot of guys that
wouldn't you rather have that than just the stated response that, or
I don't need all of it to be like that. I mean, it'd be entertaining like Gundy and Aranda and who's the other guy that gives really great. I used to call him the new Spurrier. Oh, Lane. Lane's great. Like I love listening to Lane. Listen, I'd rather get that than some of the canned stuff that I hear repeated. It's just like a campaign speech, right? It's stump speech. You got too many coaches that do that. I wish our guy here would be a little bit less canned and a little bit off message sometimes. And hey, so-and-so's got to play better. And I'm talking about being specific about a person. Listen, I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. I just did not know where he was going with it. There's no question loaded in front of it. I did research it, and it does have to do with recruiting and team building and culture and all of those things. But anyway, I love those guys. It's actually one of my favorite segments we do. I wish and we're going to do more of it, Shane, because you and I do enjoy it more so than the guys from the Osceola did. I love that. Hey, on game night, on Saturday nights, I'll stay up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning watching multiple press conferences to see what these coaches had to say after these games. And, of course, Twitter's always great because they go ahead and cut them up for you. But anyway.
You guys talk about the
go ahead.
Between UCF. I mean, I think that's the other thing is Gus Malzahn. If you're expecting quotes out of Gus, keep waiting because you're going to hear a lot of that's a real football team over there. We won't want to know today. We, run the darn football. You hear a lot of that. Ross is a little bit more open with the media. He'll say some stuff and some stuff that gets him in trouble sometimes. But I think that's another big difference between.
Gus still thinks he's a head coach too. So we're over there at the media day the other day, and we're having lunch with the assistants. We're all sitting at these big round tables, and so these little breakouts with people getting interviews. Like I asked, hey, Coach Pan, can you give me a couple minutes? I'm going to ask you some questions. So he got up from the table where he's at, and lined up against the wall, and me and 2 other guys talked to him. Walking in at different times in the middle of the interview. And, but Gus is over there. His is very organized by SID and just like a head coach would be. Right. So I thought that was very interesting that they, set his up that way, but not every other coach's.
What I loved about Scott, and I don't know Scott very well, but in the few times we crossed paths at clinics in the Midwest, actually, he must have been at Nebraska, I guess, coaching, or Oregon, I guess. He had been at Northern Iowa. I was at Iowa State. We'd cross paths. I loved going to his clinic talks because he got up there in his blue jeans. He put a dip in, had a lipper in there, and he talked like a real guy, And then you go to some of these coaching clinics, and they don't turn off even in front of the dang high school coaches. They still put on their act. And I always loved that about Scott. I always loved that about Hype. I thought Hype was a real dude. Didn't, put on a lot of I'm sure he had coach speak, but around us, there wasn't a whole lot of false pretense. So I like that about Scott. I think Scott's a likable guy. I really do.
All right. Well, hey, Adam, I know we've kept you much longer than we said we would. And I'm sorry about that, but we appreciate you joining us. We hope that maybe we can check back in with you from time to time and do a shorter segment, maybe get some report cards on how things are going, whether it's scolding hot or really frosty at UCF this year. We'll see what happens. But if you have, but Adam, we appreciate you joining us. And where can people that are college football fans and UCF fans go to find your content?
Yeah, I appreciate it for having me. Check out YouTube at Sons of UCF. We got a ton of videos up there, media interviews, coaches interviews, player profiles, all kinds of shows. So at Sons of UCF on YouTube or our website, sonsofUCF.com. If you do the Twitter machine stuff or whatever, just search Sons of UCF. We're on all those, Twitter and Blueface and whatever else is out there. We're on all those too. So find us at Sons of UCF wherever you do anything content related.
All right. Hey, we appreciate everybody watching, listening, whether it's podcast, YouTube, cut-ups. Once we get through cutting this thing up, we appreciate you watching I think this is the 6th episode. I can't keep up in my head of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast and the first podcast that we actually had a guest on. So, Adam, appreciate you putting up with us. We'll get better at interviewing people, but we do appreciate you coming out and putting the ball down with us and talk a little football. So thank you for joining us, and have a great 2025 football season, and we'll get you back on as soon as we can.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks for having me. Keep it up. A good work.
Go Knights.
Charge on.
There it is.
You have to hit stop record on the top left or top right.
Yeah, it's not working.